Welcome to Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Salon Atlanta Museum with what's happening in these streets as we discuss breaking barriers in the city. We want to welcome the members of National Black Radio Hall of Fame Atlanta chapter. My name is Loretta Phelps. I am a radio announcer, music producer, poet, and many other hats in the community. I would like to welcome my guest, Mitch Faulkner, commercial radio personality and voiceover professional, Kiss Blue Lights in the Basement DJ. Also want to welcome Casual Cal, WIGO radio personality and University Soul Circus ringmaster. Also on the set is Rakaya Ward, radio personality, WRFG house music queen. Welcome to my guests. Thank you all for coming out and making this happen.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thank you very much. My first question to you all are basically when researching Atlanta, deciding on the move to Atlanta, what was the attraction that brought you here? Casual Cal and Mitch, because you all are from out of town.
Well, the year was like 1974 for me in New York. I was student government president of my high school, and there was a young lady named Miss Lucille White, who was like a supervisor, in fact, assistant principal.
Okay.
She called me to her office one day and she said, "Young man, where are you going to college?" And I was telling her I was thinking about Penn State and all these, and she said, "Please." She says, "No." She said, "I think you need to go down to Atlanta and to Morehouse College." She says, "You're a leader, and I think you need to go somewhere that nourishes leaders."
Okay.
Then she started throwing out names, and then she put Martin Luther King down there. A tear came out my eye, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to pack right away." So that was my whole interest in Atlanta, because I had no interest in Atlanta at all. So when she mentioned Atlanta, I started researching. Then I had kin folks who'd been down there say it's so nice and so on and so on. And she got me a football scholarship to go down there. I was playing sports. But once I got to Atlanta and saw these guys who play football at homecoming and all that, North is not like that. So I looked at them and I said, "This is like a bear chasing me in my underwear. I ain't playing no football." So that's how I came to Atlanta. That was my direction here.
Welcome. I know I followed you for a long time. When we were like 20 years old, and I remember being at WIGO when you all had a broadcasting class for the young professional who wanted to start broadcasting, and no other station presented that type of program, and that's why I was like following you and Mitch over the years. So Mitch, what brought you to Atlanta?
For me, I started in radio when I was 16 in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and I graduated from high school, and I wanted to leave from there, and I was trying to find the best opportunity. I went to the military. I got out of the military and I came back and started working at the radio station. I decided to go to school at a place called Austin P. State University in Clarksville, Tennessee. And so when I went to the school, I guess about 2 weeks, and the local station switched from pop to urban. And so when I was working part-time at the station, doing the rock and roll station on the weekend and doing the pop on the weekends. And so when they switched to urban, they moved me to full time from 3 until 7 p.m. And so I told the instructor that I was going to have a problem deciding whether to go to school or go to work. And the instructor pulled me to the side and said, "Look, I'm going to give you some advice." He said, "If you tell somebody I told you, I'm going to tell them you're lying, because they're going to believe you. They're going to believe me more than they believe you." He said, "But," he said, "this school is going to be here, but the job opportunities, and nobody gets the opportunity to work full time in the field that you're going to go to school for." He said, "I suggest you go take the job, and then you can always come back to school." And so I've been trying to get back to school ever since then. but I worked at just about every radio station in the city. But my first station here was WCLK, and I learned so much at that station for big city radio. I was coming from a small town. I had certain ways to do things. I met Rakaya Ward there, and Neiswa Biku was the program director, and and a guy by the name of Al Thompson. What was Al's name?
Al.
The production guy. But anyway,
Al Felker.
Al Felker,
Mm.
and so that was my thing. But from there it just progressed. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, great, thank you. Rikai, the question for you is, as a native Atlantan, we both witnessed the revitalization of Atlanta. What drew you to radio?
Ooh, that is so interesting because when I was 16, I was a reporter to WERD, the first station, as a teen reporter from the high school. Well, I didn't really think about that I was going to be getting into radio because my first desire was to be a studio remixer.
Okay.
I wanted to go in the studio and make the music come together, but that was just a desire. I also was into jazz a little bit more than your average teenager.
Okay.
So when I did that, around about 1976, WCOK decided to have a skeleton crew for the summer. And so I became a volunteer music director.
Okay, cool.
And as I came to the station, I learned a lot of things. I've learned to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things, which made me pretty essential for being able to follow in, fill in, and whatever else you could do. But my nature of being in radio was that I loved to mix music.
Cool.
And I was just natural at it.
Yeah.
There were people that could tell I was on the air without me saying anything. Oh, Rikai is,
Yeah.
By your style.
By the style, they just knew it. And I've taught and sculptured a lot of people, even Mitch.
I was one.
Mitch will say he came from country western and he didn't know nothing about this type of stuff, but he got to be very, very good.
Yeah.
He had the voice,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one asset. If you got the voice, oh my God, you could do a lot of things with that. I've been asked to do voiceovers for other DJs and stuff like that, but more people liked the sound of my voice. When I went to Detroit and worked at JZZ, they said my dialect was too southern.
Yeah.
But of course, being up in the Midwest and being up there, after a while you come home, you kind of clean up your act with your diction and enunciation. So nobody really knows that I'm a Grady baby and I was born right here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Exactly. Because when back in 70s, 80s, the diction had to be Midwestern where nobody could detect where you were from.
Clean.
Yeah. So my next question to you all would be, what are the pros and cons you observe coming to Atlanta or being in Atlanta in the radio market? What was the pros and cons for you?
In the radio market, the pros and cons is very, very challenging for me because I come from New York, a number one radio market. And I came from a market where they had black-owned station owners. And I came from a market where my uncle was a program director on the AM side, WLIB. They had WVLS and WLIB locked up in New York. And on the AM side, it was block programming. So every jock had his own show, like the Tonight Show.
Okay.
You understand? Every jock had his own show. The format of music and the jingles and the drops are all the same, but they had their own basic show. So I got a chance to see some very talented personalities. On the FM side, I got a chance to see Black Class. Frankie Crocker was over there,
right.
and he was just, Rolls Royce and suits, and he was making New York elegant. He was making black New York elegant. And then on the AM side, it was personality and talent driven, basically going on. And with Frank and being at BLS, I got a chance to hear women jocks
Right.
for the first time. Women were very expressive in New York on radio. So I can understand what Rikai is saying about listening to a woman on radio. I don't care where she is or where, just listening to a woman on radio was fascinating back in the early 80s and late 70s. So radio was challenging, and when I came down here, I wanted to go to radio. And when I got here, I started researching everybody and visiting everybody. I went down to every station, shook hands with most of the jocks, and got to learn them and study and get in where I fit in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of a different situation because when I hit Atlanta was 1980. It was right in the period of transition where black radio was going from what Cal talked about with the individual shows to formatted radio. And that meant that you had a program director and a music director that picked every song that was on the radio. They made the decisions about every song they played, and then they administrated that to the jocks. And so I was in the beginning of the formatted radio phase of Atlanta because RGO had gone through that transition by the time I got there. And so it was a little bit different, but by the time I reached V103 in 1984, we had gotten used to doing that, and then I became dominant because I used the voice and the technique to deliver formatted radio. You know, it wasn't going to be a mystery what song I was going to play. Probably play the same song I played yesterday, 15 minutes before I played it yesterday. So I got to make that interesting with the way I conversed on the air. And in the spring rating period of 1984, I hit #1 in Arbitron, which is the service that rates the radio stations. And about 3 years after that, I came to know that I was the first one in history to do that, and didn't realize it. I mean, it's like when you're working, you're working. You're not looking at trying to hit a certain benchmark. But that was pretty interesting as I look back. So from now until eternity, the first black radio DJ in Atlanta to become #1 was me. And that was because of the voice and just understanding formatted radio.
Yeah, congratulations.
And I think that voice thing is important because Mitch was heavy AM.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're taking his voice and put it on FM.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Exactly.
I mean, wow. So that was very interesting, particularly with Mitch, because everybody knew him in AM, and when they heard that crystal clear FM, man, they were like, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Pretty
Right.
cool.
Well, it's a little different with me because I was at the little 54-watt station. People would have to go outside and sit in their cars to listen to WRFG when I got there. And CLK was a little bit the same too. It was just on the low end of the totem pole. What we did, we were doing a lot of damage because a lot of professional commercial radio station, they were playing 513 with the records and stuff. And me, I would give it a chance. But see, I learned the art of blending. I could make your grandmother, your mom become a star on the radio because I had devised a formula format, music format that I like that included all types of music. So then they wanted to call me a fusion queen. But I was like, no, I just like all the music and make it blend. And it was wonderful. So as far as the bad
So you were
side,
the original buffet.
Oh yes, I
Ooh,
was.
it
the
wasn't
first
food,
one.
y'all. It was music.
I mean, I could do some Lakeside and some Charles Mingus and some Charles Erland and do some Herbie Hancock and do some Sarah Vaughan, and I could just mix them up in such a way that it all fitted.
Right.
And so people were like curious and interested and entertained.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the good side of it, I like to say that I've shared the joy of enhancing DJs like Mitch and Spike Lee, Amanda Davis before she passed, and a whole lot of other Clark students that came through that whole tunnel of the broadcasting side. Some of them didn't have the voice, so you had to try to teach them a little bit of how not to be so nasal, because that's the main problem in radio.
Yeah.
So if you learn that, and then it was interesting because I just feel like when I hit, that was it. So
Yeah.
when you were blending right and it was good, you felt it. You were like, yes. And other people felt it too.
Okay, I wanted to say, just to kind of clarify on what Ms. Ward said about her ability to help us as the jocks to understand the music. When I got to WCLK, I came from Kentucky, and so my mantra was to do the trash talking radio, as far as the DJs, and I was still learning that and anticipating using that as my presentation tool. And so when you think about WERD with Jack Gibson and those DJs, they had a lot of rhymes they would do, ooh dop dop and pop dop and all that stuff. And I was trying to learn how to do that. When I got here and started working with WCLK, and met Miss Ward, she was explaining to me that I could turn out the radio show without having to say a word if I understood the music and the types of music that I was playing, and how one artist would go into another artist, and one song would match with another song based on how you played it on the radio. And you could elevate people. You could actually move people from square one to square five within inside of an hour. You know, you may start off listening to some Charles Earland, you wind up somewhere else down the road. But it was interesting to me to learn that technique, because without that technique that I learned from her, I couldn't have gotten to the next radio station I went to. You know, in terms of understanding the music industry and understanding how music relates to people, how people relate to music, and how they used it. You know, I used to want to know, what are you doing right now? They said, well, I'm cleaning the house. Well, now I need to understand what you're doing, so the music I can play
Complements it.
enhance your mood, you know?
Yeah.
But I want to say something else in terms of that blending thing. Blending was a big thing in New York, in particular, because of the fact that Frankie Crockett established this thing when going into coming out of it. He's the only guy that could play blues, jazz, a disco record all in one set because of that blending. The second part about you doing the blending, I also think it opened up the doors for the Quiet Storms.
It did.
You understand? They didn't do variety of music, but they can use your blending
That's right,
when it
'cause-
comes down to that part of it.
Because, see, I was the first one to do vocals over music
Right.
before anybody else, because nobody else knew how to
To do that
attack
blending
that.
coming
And it's
right.
a feeling thing. It's kind of like knowing when to do it, because you can't step on the music. And
I call it the Dwayne Jones effect.
Well, actually,
He know when to come in and get out of there.
Look, don't forget Dr. Feelgood.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
Dr. Feelgood,
He was
yeah.
the best.
He
But-
could ride.
Because he was
all
close to
night.
you
Yes.
on
yes,
blending and
yes.
talking.
Well,
Yes.
blending is really a replica of setting the mood.
That's exactly
Of course.
right.
Once you set the mood, and from my experience, I've noticed that people believe in a radio announcer to a point that what they say is law, it's facts.
Right.
Regardless of how it is, how you're doing it, it's perceived once it come across the air as a factual thing that's really happening.
Absolutely.
Like they did the thing on Kiss 104 with the restaurant thing. And
Cafe.
the cafe, midday cafe. And these people were actually thinking they were at an actual cafe. So we're going to move to the next question
Okay.
for the sake of time, okay? But I'm really enjoying this, and it's a wonderful feel. So under various mayors of color in Atlanta, what was your view on the city? How did you view the city with the black mayors of Atlanta over the decades?
I was comfortable. I felt like I was on a ride, not knowing where it's going, but it felt good. I saw people benefiting. I saw politicians coming out, you know, headstrong, head up, both women and men, by the way, in this town. And once I saw Maynard Jackson and played a part in his campaign, and I learned Atlanta through him, basically, following him and seeing how he ordered and all. It gave me hope. It gave me a whole lot of hope. And when he won, that just fueled me to go to the moon.
Okay. I can
So
understand.
it really, I got excited, period.
Yeah.
So anything to follow, I'm just a high, crazy young man.
Yeah, the same thing for me. When I was at WIGO, when I first got here, you know, when I went transition from WCLK to WIGO, I was involved in Maynard Jackson's second run for mayor, second term. And then fast forward into the point when he died, I was at WALR, Kids 104. And so that station was owned by Cox. And Cox owns WSB TV
That's right.
and WSB AM. And Neil Borch was on WSB AM. And so the day that they had Maynard's body laying in state, Neil Borch was broadcasting from the State House. And so here we are at Kiss 104, and we wasn't doing anything to say that Maynard Jackson had passed or he even existed or whatever. And so I got upset about that because of the fact that we were the black radio station for Cox, but we were saying nothing about it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. This man has done more for Atlanta than anybody else. We should be really doing something on the air. So I went to the program director, and when they were promoting that Neil Borch was going to be at the State Center, at the State House, broadcasting from there on that day, I suggested to our program director, let me go and do it for our station. He said, well, we're not going to do it. They don't believe in us stopping the music. I'm like, we're not stopping the music for Maynard? This is Maynard Jackson. You understand who this is? This is Maynard Jackson. I'm like in that mode. And they like, well, just calm down. We're going to do something. And so we got to the next day, and nothing was done. And I was arguing with the program director, and I said, you're concerned about stopping the music for Maynard Jackson? I said, let me give you a story, because the program director was not from here. And I told him, I said, when Maynard Jackson had the proposal for the airport, Hartsfield International Airport, where he wanted to expand the airport was in the middle of 85. And 85, when you go to the airport, you make a right, and 85 goes around that curve.
That's right.
That curve was not there. 85 went straight across. And Zell Miller was the governor. And I know Maynard Jackson contacted Zell Miller and said, this is where I want the airport. And Zell said, well, look, you right in the middle of 85. And Jackson said, move it. And they moved 85 and took it around the curve. And I said, if Maynard could move Highway 85 to build an airport, we can't move a record to commemorate his passing. And it was a big thing, but that was my attitude, for the.
I want to see look on his face behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I was wanting to say about for the mayors. The main thing I remember about Maynard that was so of human culture is when he spent the night in bank headquarters.
That was impressive.
And he spent the night unafraid, regular home and everything, just to see how people live. I thought that was very humane for him to do that. The other person that I really give kudos to is Shirley Franklin, because she got all the projects where they all went down, and then she devised affordable housing, which cleaned up our act of how we lived, where we lived. We didn't have that project ghetto kind of thing. If you notice, most places don't care what they're doing, but they got a respect for the community.
Yes.
And it doesn't have that look like it used to when the projects were around. So those two, I can remember how influential they were to me. Now we've got to deal with hoping that future mayors will have our pulse for what we really need. And see, a lot of us now become seniors.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So we done paid our dues, but we need to be respected. You know what I'm
And
saying?
the other thing about Maynard that none of the other ones did, he made more black millionaires than any other mayor ever.
True that.
Exactly.
And his idea was that y'all got ideas that can help this city. I want to pay you, and I want y'all to be out there. And we had more black construction workers, PR folks, TV folks. It just took off. It was a wonderful time to be in Atlanta. I just say
Yes,
that.
it was.
But I actually want to say we all in the broadcasting industry, whether it's music, whether it's a film, of television or something of that nature, we are like musical journalists. We
Yeah,
deliver
true.
the message in the music, and we deliver the information over the airwaves. And that's what I just came up with. We are musical journalists, that's what we could
That's
call
pretty
ourselves.
cool.
Yeah.
I like
So the next question is there anybody you met that transformed your life, positive or negative?
I would say for me was Hosea Williams.
Okay.
And to give you a little bit on that was, I think it was around 87 or 88, they were having conflict with the KKK in Cummins, Georgia. And so he decided he was going to take a busload of people up there to participate in a parade that the city was doing in Cummins, Georgia. And they were anticipating the KKK marching, and so they had to get a permit to be in the parade. And so Jose, of course, applied for the permit in Cummins, Georgia, and there was some resistance that they didn't want him to be there. And he was like, well, you gave a permit to the KKK, why you can't give a permit to me? And they was wanting to know what his message was and that kind of thing, and asking him all these questions. Like, this is too many questions. compared to just to walk down the street in a parade. And so we were programming at KISS 104 WALR at that time, and one of my DJs, Eric Moore, said, I'll go with him, you know, and report back to the station what's happening. So he rode the bus, and that was at the beginning around the, you know, when the cell phones were just catching on, we were talking on the phone. So he was sitting on the bus. He said, man, they're throwing rocks at the bus.
Yeah, I remember that.
when Jose and them went up there, and you could hear all the noise, but I kept the pot open just so the listeners could hear what was going on. And it got to the point where people were calling and saying, well, where they at? Where they at? Because I want to go up there and let them know what's really going on. So people wanted to drive to Cummins to violently show them what Atlanta was all about. They said, y'all don't understand what Atlanta is. Atlanta is not like the demographics of Cummins, you know. And we got, you know, black people down here. We come up there and raise some things up, you know. And it was because of that sound that we put on the radio that incensed that feeling. Just like what Rakaya said, you know, it's like if you don't evoke some type of emotion to a listener, you haven't done your job.
Exactly.
If you ain't made them mad, if you ain't made them happy, if you ain't made them want to party, then you haven't done anything. What's the purpose of you being on the radio if you can't move somebody? And that's what
and what you did, Mitch, is significant because you don't have to be the one to do it.
Right.
We watch sports all the time. And you ever hear the announcer say, welcome to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
And he stops. And all you hear is the crowd.
Yeah.
He don't have to sell it.
That's right.
That's it right there. And you want to be there, or you turn the TV up, or you getting ready to get in your seat to watch something. So that's exactly what he did with the ambiance of all that noise. And that's very smart.
The other part of it is that once you kind of create a style with people where they enjoy you, they almost expect you like going to work or meeting a clock or being on an appointment. They be like, okay, Rakaya's coming on now, so I gotta listen. You know, I gotta listen to her because it'll change their whole ambiance.
It's a part of their day.
And all of that. But I can truly say, when I was at WCLK, I had an opportunity to do a few things. I had an opportunity to promote myself, to participate in radio conventions and stuff.
That's correct.
Taking myself out there. I've been to Africa twice.
Right.
I had an opportunity to do some things like some community things. And kind of promote what people were doing in the community. Because you have to be visual for support for the things that are going on. Because if you're not, then you're separating yourself. And you don't want to do that. You want to be a part. So I was very supportive of different things that went down. So that's a good thought to look at from the point that you're trying to make. Is where did it take us? What did we do? How were we involved?
And actually, your theme song when you came on the
Oh,
air, your
yes.
program, you started your
That's a part of it right
program.
there.
Everybody had a theme song.
That's like setting your table.
Oh, I sure have one.
And with that theme song, the listeners could identify. Casual Cam come on, Mitch is on. You know, they were intrigued with the music and knowing what was going to come after that theme song. A bunch of good music.
But there are two people who really influenced me out of Atlanta. One was the Reverend James Orange.
Okay.
I never met a man who wear overalls and low key and know everybody.
Yeah.
The president, everybody.
Yeah. But see, Atlanta was based around that. Hi, I'm Loretta Felson, and I want to welcome you to What's Happening in These Streets as we present to Marsha Radio Lady George an award for her outstanding contribution to the community of radio announcers. In retrospect to that, we are presenting her with this award as a dedicated and loving individual who respect and love those radio personalities. Thank you all for witnessing this opportunity to present Marsha with this Golden Award.